Hello and welcome to Crusader Kings 2. I am Lord Farwin. Here with a guide on what you can do to some just general tips about Crusader Kings 2. People have been asking me why I'm doing what I'm doing and how I'm doing what I'm doing in my current Taoist game over here in the Western Protectorate, so I figured I'd toss out a video with some basic tips and guides. First thing, and most people don't realize that the levy of your capital country, if you look at the modifier, you get plus 50 for that. Also, if you own the duchy that it's part of, the other two province, in this case, I'm doing the Byzantine Emperor, also get a bonus as well, meaning that staying within the de jure lands you own, like duchies and counties, is your best move and will be the center of your power for ages. Now, this does mean that these baronies down here, and that one, actually that's the only other castle we can own, would be a very good province and land to acquire. Obviously, we'd have to revoke it, and that gets all confusing. But if you can consolidate your power in one province, specifically your capital, if you're below a duke, or even if you are a duke, it's worth keeping because your heir, even if you're under Gavelkind, will always keep your capital county. So it can be a way of building up power and passing it from generations if you're in Gavelkind. Now, speaking of different laws, the best form of government, the best form of succession is primogeniture. The only other one that gets even close is if you're Celtic up here, you can do Tanistry, which is pretty cool. Gavelkind is very, very bad because it divides your lands, but if you have only counties, you lose control of those counties. If you are a duchy, you'll keep the capital province and the ducal title. If you're kingdom, you'll keep the kingdom titles and all your heirs underneath it. At most, they will get duchies. So if you're one level ahead, you can actually theoretically retain land through Gavelkind succession, but it's painful. Elective Gavelkind is not too great either. It does allow for election of the heir, but it tends not to do a really good job of it. It just tends to make a mess of everything, elective Gavelkind. Seniority and Ultimogeniture are the vice versa of the same. Oldest title, oldest member of dynasty inherits, younger member of the dynasty inherits. Seniority and Ultimogeniture are really good for consolidating land if you've lost a lot of land through Gavelkind and stuff. On the other hand, if you pick this one, you'll tend to have like a 2-year-old child rule. If you pick this one, you'll be going through lots of monarchs really quickly, which tends to lead to a lot of council discontent and factions forming. Elective monarchy is just really bad. If you get it, you should move away from it because what it does is it shifts the highest title around in your realm. So we'd lose the emperor title half the time as the Byzantines. The only place, you just want to get rid of it essentially. As soon as you can move to primogeniture, you want to. Unfortunately, if you're a pagan, as in not, pretty much not Christian, you have issues with that. Obviously, the Muslims have their succession law of Iqwa, which is kind of like elective Gavelkind without the splitting of the land. Kind of awesome. It's definitely pretty much primogeniture in the sense that one heir will get all the titles. The problem is it's whichever heir you have is stronger, so that can vary. You can control it to some degree. And out here in the India, you can get all different types of laws, which is always a bit exciting to see how that all works out. But by and large, you want to move to primogeniture as soon as possible. Tanistry is kind of cool because you can do dynasty mechanics, and your heir still keeps a good amount of land. So that's one thing you want to do is switch laws. The next thing to do is manage your council. Now, this is one area people have a lot of issues with. You're essentially your chief minister. You should either have him performing statecraft, improving relations with rebellious dukes, lords, kings, whatever size you are, or they should be out fabricating claims. Fabricating claims is kind of a it's tough to do. It doesn't always give you a claim for a long time. So if you don't have anything else for the chief minister to do, you should always have them trying to fabricate claims. You can always decline taking the claims for some prestige, or you can take them. It also is a good place to put rebellious nobles, because this is probably the least important province in your council, which is kind of hilarious. Plus, if you send them out to fabricate claims against somebody who has a really good spy master, the odds are they'll get assassinated. It's a good way of getting rid of rebellious lords. Your command of your army here, whatever it's called, your marshal, is the next important position. I've never really used research military tech, but the key one is train troops. This doesn't look like much. You throw it to a province, and all of a sudden, let's tick forward a little bit here. He's now... Oh, wait. Does that tell you where it is? Sorry. Oh. There we go. You have to actually go here rather than over here. It boosts the levies in your castle, in this case 45%. So if you've got one really concentrated province with like 3 or 4 castles in it, that's your capital county, and it's in your duchy, you can get some insane boosts to it. As you can see, I'm getting 200 free troops just to having that one guy training troops there. So obviously at this point buildings could be a lot more developed, but it does make quite a difference. Their council, your finance advisor, really. Administer realm is somewhat useful, but the big thing is collecting taxes. 25% modifier gain in this case makes a big difference. It can really make your lands a lot more prosperous. Again, if you've got one province or 2 provinces where you've concentrated all your power and wealth, those 2 advisors make a huge difference. Your spy master should be left on scheme if you're worried about plots. Sabotage province can be slightly interesting, and building spy network if you're going to plot against somebody is good, but study technology if you're a poor backwards country, specifically like the hordes. You can actually spend your spy master out to study technology, and they will actually bring back some of the technology ticking score, but they also have an event where they can get random 50 technology points in any category, even if you're already ahead of the province you're spying on in technology. Some places that are really good to spy on are obviously Constantinople, the Abbasid Caliphate, and the other one that usually is pretty good is the Western Protectorate's lands. Pretty much anyone who is a massive empire, usually they're going to be ahead of time in tech, which is kind of interesting. And for your last advisor, you should probably improve religious relations if you're like dealing with the Pope or Patriarch that's causing you trouble. But other than that, research cultural tech is kind of interesting in a sense because the cultural technology tree is your best technology tree. Proselytize is the only way you're going to convert provinces. In that sense, it's really useful. It nicely now shows where you can send it to pagans to try and convert them to your religion. It's difficult to do, and the AI usually does a better job than you do, but you can do it. And it'll also highlight all provinces in green that can be converted. In this case, the Byzantines are having issues with the item class, so not a lot of provinces are item classed. In fact, only a handful are. And that's pretty much it. Hunting apostates is a good one if you've got nothing to do because it will give you piety. So also some important law things to realize. Couple of the better laws to pass are controlled realm inheritance. If you move it to illegal, specifically if you're like Central Europe, your realm will no longer kind of divide itself when people die. For example, if the heir is in another country, the lands that heir inherits will leave your lands. That prevents it, which is kind of awesome. Other stuff that's really good is if you're at a like an empire level or crown level, allow vassal war declaration. Really good one is only external wars, if you can pass it. Obviously, in this case, we have a lot of opponents, but I could bribe them. This prevents pretty much anyone from consolidating their power in their realm and making an actual threat to you. It's good if you've got a lot of tiny little vassals. For like the Byzantines, it's not bad because it prevents anyone from conquering a ton of land and all of a sudden setting up a miniature kingdom within your empire. But their vassals don't like it. If you can, disallowing vassal wars at all means that you're the only one who can expand in your realm outside of inheritance, which is really powerful. Of course, it makes your vassals hate you a lot more, so they'll form more factions. I tend to like only external vassal wars because it means that if you've got powerful dukes or kings on your borders, they will actually try and take land and expand your empire that way because that's the only way they can grow. And you can always frame them for treason, take their titles and everything later on. Other stuff that's good, centralization is really powerful, especially if you're in an empire. Um, if you go above medium centralization, you start to lose vassal limits, which can be a problem because obviously if you're over vassal limit, they'll leave. But the higher you are in centralization, the more actual provinces you can, titles you can control yourself. So as I said, if you've got like 1 or 2 provinces that are really good and you concentrate your power there, you can have 4 or 5 titles in the same area just due to centralization and have, sometimes you can raise like 20,000 troops from a single province easily. And then one of the best ones in the game, probably the single best law, is vice royalties. If you have no vice royalties, you've got the standard inheritance laws. If you've got kingdom or duchies, what you can do is you can find somebody. Let's say, we'll just give this guy one. Grant landed title, you can give, you can either give it to them grant landed title and give them like a duchy, which in this case they keep permanently, or you can give them what's called a vice royalty. When they die, the title will return to you and you can give it to whoever you want. If you're having trouble with, say, a duke, in this case, this guy has a vice royalty. When he dies, we'll re-inherit the duchy titles and give it to anyone we want, so we can give it to weak vassals within the realm. And if you've disallowed internal wars with external wars, they can't actually fight the way to the title, so you can start giving very weak vassals very strong lower vassals, which means that you can reduce the threat of factions or uprisings, which is very powerful. And of course, status of women is good, usually to pass all the way to full when you can, because at some point, unless you're Muslim, you're going to have a female ruler on the throne, and it's better that that female ruler isn't hated for being a female monarch. Plus, it allows you to have very talented women be your advisors. And oddly enough, the women tend to be better educated than a lot of the men in this game. Revoking title is a necessity. No revocation of titles is a pain because that means even if someone's a traitor, all you can really do is lock them up. You can't actually take their lands. Revoking titles is good, but really one of the best ones is religious mandate. You can revoke titles based on if they're not your religion, which is particularly good if you've recently subdued an area, or for example, if you're playing as, the Abbassids with like 20 different religions in their lands, it seems like. It allows you to take titles away from people who aren't of your religion, and your vassals won't care at all, which is really, actually, I think the vassals of the religion group you take it away from might care, but your other vassals of your faith won't care at all, and then you can give it to people of your faith, and thus ensure a much more loyal, stable, and religious realm. And administration, in order to get to primogeniture or vice royalty stuff, you have to do late feudal administration, but imperialism allows you to give viceroyal duchies and stuff, which is really the end goal. You want to be viceroyalty, duchies, and imperial. You can also still give kingdom viceroyalties, and it means that no landed vassal will have time to build up an empire. In terms of technology, the best technological things to aim for are legalism, or those wonderful centralization and changed inheritance laws like, duchy vice royalties. So I tend to focus legalism in this tree. The next real good one is tolerance, specifically if you've got multiple religions in your area. Plus it also gives you the status of women modifiers, which are good. You can either do that next or majesty. Majesty is particularly good because it allows you to gain more prestige and piety, which, increases your score. But it also reduces the short reign years that people don't like your monarch because they're a new monarch on the throne. Which can be really handy in ensuring stability. Plus, also the gain of prestige and piety makes those vassals like you more later on, because vassals are actually influenced by your prestige and stuff, which is kind of cool. And let's see, in terms of economy, obviously since you are, unless you're playing as a republic, playing as a hereditary feudal monarchy or something equivalent, the best areas to focus are castle, infrastructure, improved keeps, and construction. Obviously, at some point you want to do town and church just to strengthen those vassals, and if you're really worried about vassals stealing your technology and getting too strong, you can focus town and church, because those two types of vassals tend not to be very rebellious, unless you've allowed them to form like a serene republic or something, Venice, or Amalfi down here, or Genoa later on. Of course, you can create your own, which is rather awesome, but I'm not going to go into that. Construction allows you to build and upgrade. What is it called? I'm drawing a blank. Hospitals, yes, which can increase the disease resistance of your lands so that your people won't necessarily all die and your province won't become, devastated and lose you tax levy and other stuff. Specifically, it will help you survive like the Black. It will survive any plague other than the Black Death. The Black Death will hit every province pretty much. I have yet to resist it actually moving into a province with a very upgraded hospital. But the cool part about a hospital is I can't show you, but some of the higher upgrades, specifically I think it's Translation House and the library, actually will give you tech points, which is really good. Obviously, if you build one of those, you have your advisors working well, and you've got a good monarch that focuses on advances. You can get ahead in technology, and once you're ahead in technology, you can kind of beat anybody. In terms of military advances, this one's a bit more interesting. The big one to ignore, unless you're really worried about ships, which usually ships aren't a problem, is ignore shipbuilding. The next one that you can kind of ignore is siege equipment, but the very key one is the military organization, because it boosts your morale of armies supply limit, which is key if you're ever going to invade the pagans. You have to get to level 4, reduce that attrition penalty. But it also boosts your retinues, which are one of the key concepts in the game if you're a large empire. They're essentially a permanently raised levy, and I believe they're locked behind a DLC, but it's one of the better DLCs. Essentially, it allows you to have a reinforce like 250 or more soldiers every month. They do cost some money in maintenance, but you can have them raised and on the borders when you declare a war. They don't actually count as a raised levy, which if I raised these guys, then I wouldn't be able to declare war. Can't have any raised levies. But retinues don't count, plus they count towards your overall power, which means your vassals will take that into account when forming factions or being rebellious. So overall, retinues are really powerful if you can afford it. Obviously, each level you go up boosts it by like 150. So at the full level, you can have an insane amount of retinues, which is really powerful. The next ones, I tend to focus towards the heavy infantry over light infantry, because light infantry is kind of cannon fodder. Heavy infantry is really a lot of the core of your armies. A smaller army of heavy infantry can easily demolish a much larger light infantry army, and cavalry is just overall really good to have, specifically if you're the nomads, because most of your armies are going to be cavalry. It boosts your attack and defense, which is really strong. Also, if you have war elephants and stuff. Siege equipment is really just how well you defend against siege or how fast you siege. It's crucial, but I've never found it to be a game breaker either way. The difference between the siege is 100% faster siege at the end, but if you're sieging the provinces, you probably aren't in a race against time based off the way the Crusader Kings wars work. I don't think I really need to talk much about levies. Only key thing is if you can do stuff with holy orders, like the Christians and other stuff can. Holy orders are very powerful for your wars, but they won't fight people of your religion. Mercenaries are interesting. The higher level ones are very expensive, and if you run out of money, they might turn on you in the wars. But they can be a nice little boost of manpower, specifically if you're starting out as a count and you want a duchy. You build up 2,000-3,000 gold, and you can afford to raise one of these armies for several months, enough to take out a nearby count or something. Really, late game mercenaries are key because they reinforce like retinues do, and you can raise them relatively quickly, and they will all appear in one province, which is very powerful as well. Fleet, you really only use it for transporting. In terms of intrigue, the only real key thing I ever find here, some people disagree, is I like to do auto-stopping plots. Other people don't like to, because then you can actually frame more vassals for treason and strip their provinces. Either way you want to do that, that's really good. Other key things to note is recruiting a court physician if you can. It's better to have one than not have one, unless the guy you get is a complete moron, in which case they can accidentally kill you. It's worth watching out for the mystics, because they can do weird things that might kill you off. Other key things, if you can, is composing a book is really good. You just have to have a good amount of learning. Those can add some crazy benefits. In my Taoist game, I think I've got like 8 stewardship from that. Bonus income, bonus learning, bonus martial skill. It's really powerful. Holding a feast in summer fair just temporarily boosts prosperity and prestige. Not particularly overwhelmingly powerful, but if you've got an excess amount of money, it's another monthly prestige game. Or if you're small and want to boost your prosperity, borrowing money from the Jewish merchants is actually only available to, I believe, non-Indian religions. I don't believe the Indians can do so, or actually most of the pagans can't. Essentially, you get 300 gold immediately. You lose some relations with your vassal, and you have to repay them 350 at any future date. Does continue between the generations, so if your father borrowed money from the merchants, as the son, you owe them more money. Searching for a smith is really good. You can choose between a jewelry smith or a armsmith. The armsmith, you can get like armor or weapon. That will boost your ruler's martial skill and combat ability, which in the newest update will be really good because duels will be a much bigger thing. But the jewelry smith, if you can afford it, it's very expensive. You'll probably end up borrowing money from the Jews to do so. Will actually boost vassal relations, and that is really key, because anything that makes your vassals happy with you is a good thing. Specifically, it can counteract the effects of taking like a legal war declaration. You get like 7 or 8 opinion from them, and all of a sudden you have a lot less rebellions. And expelling the Jews, you can expel them. Specifically, what you can do is you can borrow money from them, then you can expel them and get a ton of money. You lose tax, you lose prestige, and you lose diplomacy. And you have to wait like 10 years before you can invite them back or so. Factions, any faction that's against you is bad, but if you're against your ruling lord, factions are good to join. Just be aware, whoever the faction leader starts the fight, not you, so you can get pulled into hopeless wars if you're worried. Specifically, like the Byzantine Empire and the Abbasid Caliphate are a lot stronger than they appear to be. So be very careful against rebelling, especially against emperor tier rulers. Kingdom, not as much, but emperors also, they will raise mercenaries and can change in power very suddenly. Your religion, it's good to, the more moral authority, the better you can convert. The lower, you'll have more heretics, rebellions, and problems in your land. But outside of the Catholics, there's not a lot of interactions. They've got the College of Cardinals and stuff, but there's not immense bonuses. But if you are pagan, you do get modifiers, which is worth checking out. Let's see if I can actually track down the modifiers here. I don't think so. But they can be very powerful. In terms of upgrading lands now, because we've pretty much finished off that, I'll go into societies maybe in another video. Not a lot of people have that DLC. The key things to build immediately are walls. Walls don't seem like much, but they boost levy, tax, and forts, which is really strong. In fact, a good portion of your money comes from your castle walls. The next one to focus, usually, unless you really need troops, is castle towns, because the greater income you have, the better. Castles don't give you a lot of income. You're better off getting that from your priest and your merchant republic vassals. But every little bit of income helps, and you can actually get some pretty nice income. Plus, you're putting your steward in the province will also boost the income as well. After that, it really is a toss-up. The militia training ground gives you more units per your money, but they are light infantry and archers. But if you're worried about rebellions in your land, it's worth building that. If you want to conquer things, building your barracks is worth more because you get more heavy infantry, and pikemen are amazing in terms of the defense. Stables, not overwhelmingly powerful. Light cavalry is not the strongest. It's really only good at countering other light cavalry and somewhat horse archers. But once you can get some heavy cavalry, specifically like the Byzantines, the French, or the final 2 upgrades on the stables, heavy cavalry is very powerful. Also, each culture group has their own unique building. In case of the Byzantines, you get some horse archers and some heavy cavalry. If you're playing as like the nomads, you'll get crazy amount of horse archers, but you can get that other ways. Certain places, religion-wise, I don't know what they all are. I know the Scots get like really strong infantry, the Franks get heavy cavalry, the Iberian Catholics get like light cavalry skirmishers, the Italians get, I believe, more pikemen, and on and on and on. And they can be very, very powerful, those unique buildings. I believe they fixed it so you don't immediately lose the building if you don't have the same culture, because the building will only be active so long as your ruler is of that culture. So be careful if all of a sudden your new ruler is of a different culture, you can lose the benefit of some very powerful buildings. They also boost the offense of usually the special unit, which is very powerful. Keeps are force multiplier. It's better if you build all the buildings of that level tier before you throw in a keep, because they give % of the total levies, but you have to have a high base level first to get the full % bonus. Castle fortifications, not that useful, except it slows down the taking of the forts, which is really strong, specifically if they try and assault them, but the AI and human players don't usually assault people. And the shipyard, build it when you have money, specifically if you're ever going to transport armies by sea. Otherwise, don't worry too much about it. If you're playing in the middle of Germany, you probably don't need to focus that. Same reason why you don't need to focus shipbuilding technology. But if you're someone like the Norse and you're going to go raiding, more ships are better because you can carry more loot. Also late game, if you're like England and you want to join the Crusades, having a big fleet makes it a lot easier to get your army to the Holy Land without it all dying. So, other than that, in terms of your actual ruler thing, picking a good ambition is very strong. Specifically the one that allows you to groom an heir also boosts the fertility of your ruler by like 40%, which is really good if you don't have an heir, because you need an heir, otherwise you lose the game, or your cousins take over, or weird things happen. The other one that's good is See the Realm Prosper. Reduces global revolt risk. Doesn't seem like much, but when you got a large empire, something like that can help. If you take a war chest, you can exhort your vassals for land. Well, not for land, for money, at the cost of favors and other stuff. Or they can donate it to you. Exalted Among Men or Paragon of Virtue is, it's good if you're going to get there. It'll give you like diplomacy and other stuff, but it's not a real great necessity. Specifically if you're pagan or if you're small, you'll get an ambition to become ruler of whatever land kingdom. And if you're pagan, that allows you to just rapidly subdue all the lands around you. And of course, you want to get the higher rank as a pagan, so when Gavelkind hits, you don't lose as much land. Or at least control of said land, which is very powerful. The tertiary is good. For example, they have a nail of the true cross. You get diplomacy, prestige, and piety, which is actually really strong. Diplomacy artifacts are rare, and diplomacy improves relations with your vassals, so it's a good thing to have. But the key things are martial skill, intrigue, and stewardship. The higher your martial skill, the larger levies you get. It shows up on the modifier owner's martial skill. For example, we get 35 more troops, 35% more troops in this province just because of what a great warrior he is. Specifically people like, I don't know, Charlemagne get 26, and all of a sudden their levies start to become plus 65% larger. Having a good martial skill is key. Specifically, if you take a focus of war, you'll get another 3, which is like another 5% troops. Plus, you get events that can raise it higher. So that's really good. Stewardship boosts your tax income, so if it's too low, you won't be making as much money. Plus, it also increases the amount of land you can hold. Intrigue prevents you from being assassinated. That's really the key point. Learning, if you want tech, is good, or religious stuff. And honestly, diplomacy is the weakest, but if you can get it up there, it can really stabilize high-level realms. In terms of focus, if you have way of life, martial's really good for more troops, obviously. Hunting is good for health if you've got old rulers or you're worried about them dying. Seduction, if you want to go, all Casanova, seduce people, cause havoc, or just have higher fertility and sex appeal to have better heirs. The intrigue bonus is nice, but you're better off going with intrigue because you'll get a lot of plotting events. Plus, you get plot power, which is good. Rulership, if you want like a just monarch who's diligent and other stuff, that's the way to go. It tends towards those traits. Business is really good if you want events that you pay some money now, you get more money later. Specifically, trading expeditions can boost the income of your capital provinces for like by 35% for like 20 years. It's amazing. Theology and scholarship. Theology is really if you want to do religious stuff, like be a zealot or convert land. Scholarship, obviously, more towards tech. Be careful if you do build the observatory because your character can go insane that way. Also, the Necronomicon, which you can find, is dangerous. I wouldn't advise holding on to it. In terms of diplomacy, carousing can get you some nice friends and allies among your vassals or neighboring realms. Family is good if you want to just make sure your dynasty doesn't spend all the time fighting. Plus, it gives you better health and more fertility of an heir, which is very powerful as well. Other than that, it's worth remembering you can sort by opinion of your vassals, and you can give them honorary titles or vice royalties if you have it to boost their opinion. Most people forget about the honorary titles. It's not much, but 10% all of a sudden means this guy only hates me 26 rather than 30. I don't remember what the actual faction level is, but if they're like in the 30s or 40s of opinion with you, the odds of them being rebellious is a lot lower. If it gets above 50, I think they leave factions, which is key. Let's see. Other than that, you want to educate your heir either with martial or stewardship, usually, or late game diplomacy. And you want to educate your non-heirs usually towards either stewardship or learning. You don't want to educate them ever towards diplomacy because they're more likely to become the focus of a faction to put them on the throne if they're diplomatic. Military is not bad if you want to use them as commanders, but they tend to be rebellious if they're either diplomatic or martial. If they're intrigue, they might assassinate your rulers or heirs, so be very careful of that. Stewardship is pretty harmless, and learning is even more harmless. And if you're picking focus, if you're really worried about them being a problem, faith and heritage are really good because they will make them very religious. Specifically, heritage has no specific bonus. It will just put them towards your religion and culture. Etiquette is not a bad focus, but struggle is key if you want them to have a large martial ability when they grow up, and thrift is also good if you want them to be good administrators. Pride, you can do that. I guess it would be good for your heir, but I never really do it. Same thing with duty. If you want people to administer your realm, it can be key. Specifically, what you could do is you can have a really good ruler, educated martially or diplomatically, then educate the heirs for like stewardship or even diplomacy if you want to risk it, and then have them be their older siblings' counselors, which is kind of cool. Other thing is commanders are your army troops. So usually you want to do auto-assign commanders. That way you actually have commanders when you raise armies, otherwise you won't, and commanders make a big difference to set armies. Societies, it's important to note that Lucifer's own is, kind of you're evil in a sense. You're a Satanist essentially. You get a lot of negative traits. You can die, but you can also do some crazy events, intrigue, murder, etc. The Hermetic Society is available to, I think, everybody of a non-pagan religion, might include the pagans. And that just boosts your learning and stuff, which is really key if you want to get tech. Obviously, if you're below a ducal rank, you can't gain tech points, or you can't gain tech points per month, so it's not as key. But there's a lot of really cool artifacts and missions if you do that. I think that's the most active society. If you're Catholic, you get there's two other societies. I can't remember the names, but they can give you opinion plus positive artifacts that give you great modifiers to every one of the Christian religions, which is key. If you're Muslims, there's the assassins, which are kind of really interesting to play. You can assassinate people left and right. Other than that, the key to note is if you can create kingdoms, you might want to create them for yourself, because if you don't create them, your vassals will. Eventually, if one of them gets too large. You need claims on land to attack. The religious claim mode, where you do a religious war, is probably the most powerful basic reason for war, but people around it can get called to the defense. For example, if I was to declare this one, the Abbasids would probably join, and I might lose 2 versus 3, or all the Muslims might join, or all the Christians might join. That can be really powerful. You do have some basic. There we go. I need his overruler. You can do stuff like border disputes, but it does cost you usually prestige or gold to do so. Tributary states is rather cool if you've got people nearby. You don't want to take their land, but you want money and levies from them. It's pretty powerful. They send you stuff, but if you get called to defend them and you refuse, you'll lose them, which then you have to reconquer them. I don't know of anyone who really will ever willingly become a tributary, except for people dealing with the Western Protectorate. De jure is a great way to expand, but it only nets you like 1 or 2 provinces, and usually the ruler keeps the title. Or if you're taking it away from like a count who is a duke, you'll just take the count vassal, which can be a bit of a problem. You can also do exhort tribute states, which can get you a good amount of money if you're able to do so, and you want to weaken a realm over time. Not a bad war to declare. I don't really use it that much, but they will break free when your ruler dies, but in the meantime you'll get a lot of money. Other than that, if you're playing as the Republic, that's an entirely different mechanic, and I won't even go into that. If you're playing as nomads, entirely different. If you're playing as a pagan tribe, you have to get to level 4 Hill Fort in order to reform to feudal. I don't actually remember offhand how to reform to a republic, but it's possible. You use prestige to build buildings. It goes up every 2 levels. For example, level 1 war camp won't stay when you become feudal, but a level 2 war camp will turn into like a militia mustering ground. Level 4 will turn to militia ground 2. So before you reform, it's actually worth spending the prestige to get as high up as you can. It's obviously 2 and then 4 you get the benefits from, just so that when you change over your government forms, you actually maintain it. Same thing with the market, and that's about it. That's about it. If anyone has any questions, let me know, but that's kind of the way it goes. You almost always want to have your heir engaged. You can find any beautiful, smart, or genius, or quick people to marry into your dynasty, the better. I'm not going to go into any dynasty mechanics. If people want me to do a video on that, I can, but it involves a lot of trial, error, and luck. And that's pretty much it. Having alliances with people can be good, specifically larger realms, but that you got a royal marriage or have them of your dynasty with a non-aggression pact. Difficult to do, but can be very useful, specifically if like you're a tiny nation trying to survive against the larger one. You royal marriage or even engage, and you might even be able to use them to help you conquer more land. I was doing one at Zunabil here, allied myself to Tibet, and went on to conquer this whole area with their troops. Careful about calling your allies to war too much. Eventually, they won't join you. So, other than that, the last piece of advice I have is you're not doing too well with the game. Don't be the highest level ruler. Don't be the Byzantine emperor. Be a duke or something. Ruling as the highest level ruler is very difficult. Your vassals will all be rebellious. Other nations will want to attack you. Playing as a count that controls, or a duke that controls 2/3 of the empire, makes you almost as powerful as the monarch, but with a lot less of the hassle. So, anyhow, hope you guys enjoyed this. This did go for quite a while, but I think I've covered a lot of little tricks that people don't know or need to remember to use. If you guys have any tricks, feel free to leave them in the comments. If you have questions, ask them. And that's about it. And I will see you guys all in another video. Bye for now.